Let's begin. Okay, so tonight this is part 2 of our talk on the alchemy. So this is the practical aspect of last week's talk. Last week's talk was going into the we sort of were talking about sexuality and talking about infrasexuality and talking about normal sexuality. And we began to talk about the need for transmutation, which is the fundamentals of regenerative sexuality, but we were just touching on it. Because tonight we're going to go into the practice of sexual alchemy, which is something quite defined, as it were. Because, hey Asha, come in. So it's something very defined. In our current everyday culture, it's not... There's two things to say. In our current everyday culture, both sex and the alchemy are not talked about correctly. So for one, when we talk about alchemy, we talk like in current culture, when people say alchemy, they can mean literally anything, you know what I mean? And I mean literally anything. So, you know, I mentioned this last week. It's like I was in Bangalore and I saw the alchemy of accounting. You know, I remember when I was working at Hudson's Coffee in Adelaide, they had alchemy chai syrup. You know what I mean? It was the chai syrup was called alchemy. And it had a picture of like something from, what's it called? It was like a sort of Middle Eastern eye, you know, very, very nice looking. And all that sort of stuff. So people use the word alchemy very, very liberally nowadays. But in Gnosis, alchemy means sex. Sex means alchemy. It's exactly the same thing. But when we're talking about the alchemy, we're talking about esoteric sex. We're talking about the sexual act between a man and woman in the act of love in order to have esoteric results. So we're talking about a complete union, something serious. We're not talking about the idea of good, because same thing with Tantra. Tantra is a word that means sex. That's what it means. But people have that word's now been completely sort of taken out of context, and people talk about everything, you know? It's kind of like when you say, like, remember there's like the Zen and the art of motorcycle repairs. People like that now, they go Tantra in the art of motorcycle repairs. People use the word Tantra now to mean anything spiritual. In fact, they've almost just used it as a spiritual, like hype word, you know? So same thing, alchemy and Tantra now have just become hype words, but both alchemy and Tantra mean sex. They mean the sexual act. That's what they mean, yeah? Whether it is Black Tantra, which is a sexual act committed in order to give yourself power over other people and over the world and over things, or whether it is White Tantra, which is used for the regeneration of the soul, the interior bodies, etc. So, okay, let's get into this a little more deeply. So, the next point to make is that we can't separate sex and sexuality. So tonight, of course, I'm going to be talking very candidly about the sexual act, but it's not just a sexual act. This is actually the real problem that comes with our modern schooling education here in the West, and I'm assuming, honestly, pretty much everywhere, let's be serious, is that when they teach us about sex in schools, they teach us a completely ridiculous thing. I don't know if you guys all remember, but it's pretty much the same thing. They'd sort of just basically tell you where the bits go. Yep, the penis goes in the vagina like that. There you go, like that. This is how you have an orgasm. And now here's a bunch of photos of STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. And that was it. That was like our entire sexual education class. Oh, and here's how you put a condom on a banana. Or in our case, we had bananas, which were actually dildos inside, which had a little banana sheath. So you would unsheath. The teacher gave us a banana, but you would unsheath it and it would become a penis. And it was just very, you know, of course, everyone kind of laughed. The girls were disgusted because back then people were a little more, what's the word? I don't know. But, sorry? Conservative? Yeah, conservative, sensitive. I like the word sensitive, you know? And anyway, yeah, but what we didn't talk about was relationships. We didn't talk about, they didn't even show us they didn't show anyone what a codependent relationship was, what a good relationship was. We didn't talk about love at all when we talked about sex, even though sex without love is like, I don't know. Well, we need to find a good thing, but it shouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? It just shouldn't be, you know what I mean? It's like trying to drive your car without oil. You ever done that? You ever driven your car when it's on zero oil? There's smoke, there's lights on, the whole thing's like kind of going backwards, your gearbox is falling apart. That's sex without love. You know what I mean? But they don't teach you that. Yeah, and people get into these relationships, you know. Excuse me, sorry. Dante, could you make me some sparkling water? Excuse me. So we're going to go into that a lot tonight because, yeah, as I said, people we're not taught that. We're not taught that sex and sexuality, the whole relationship is sex and sex is the whole relationship. Trying to have a relationship with a person without sex, it just doesn't really work. And vice versa. If I try to just have a sexual relationship without a relationship, it doesn't work. They're united. Yeah, the highest expression of love is the sexual act in a couple. That's what it should be. But unfortunately, again, we're not taught that. Instead, we're taught to, you know, it's this sort of like secret little thing. It might be a little bit dirty, but that's okay. Explore, you know, have fun, you know, get to know yourself, la la. But then because of that, you sort of hide it all the time. And so they really should be together. Yeah. So love is the bridge between sexuality and spirituality in the couple. And this is so unbelievably fundamental. Yeah. Is that what I'm going to talk to you about tonight is sexual magic. Yeah. The proper sexual magic. I'm not going to talk to you about black sexual magic. That was last class. Yeah. Which is concentrating on material things when you're having sex. Good luck. Have fun. Thank you, darling. But that's not what we're going to talk about tonight. What we're going to talk about is white tantra, alchemy. So sexual magic is the wise combination of sexual and spiritual yearning. So sexual yearning, spiritual yearning coming together. That's what it means to practice regenerative sexuality and white tantra. We're using yearnings on both sides. The sexual yearning, the sensation, the pleasure, and the love. Love is a sexual yearning. Yeah, you feel that strong connection with the person that draws you towards them like that. And then the spiritual yearning. Yeah, the love for the being, yeah, the love for our own intimate divine mother, our own eternal feminine, our own eternal divine being. We're talking about how to unite those. So, okay, let's talk a bit more. So sexual union, therefore, when I'm talking about an integral sexual union, yeah, I'm not just talking about the sexual act, I'm talking about a full sexual union between two people. Yeah, means here. It means a physical union. Yeah, you spend time together. You can't have a relationship if you don't spend time together. You know? It's kind of funny. People try that. You ever tried a long-distance relationship? How you going? Yeah, good. It's Zoom. It's COVID. And but we're still in love. But COVID, it's fine. You know what I mean? You know? Psychological. Yeah, the joining of the psychology. And then the spiritual. And we have these three. Everybody has these three aspects. We live in these three spheres. Yeah, we have the physical aspect, our psychological aspect, and our spiritual aspect, or esoteric, as we'll talk about. And when two people come together, they're unifying these. Or it's better said, when man and woman come together, because man and woman both have a physical, a psychological, and a spiritual aspect. And when they come together, we then have this unity in all three. Yeah, unity in the spiritual, psychological, and in the physical. And so a relationship, for instance, that doesn't have this doesn't work. You know, if our relationship is based purely in the physical, what happens? You know, it's just the body. That, you know, I like the way she moves. You know, whatever it is, all these sorts of things. Most of the songs nowadays are about the physical aspect. You know, that person looks really good. You know, I like him. They got nice eyes. I like her figure. You know, I remember I was giving this lecture to to a guy, and this is a long time ago. I was like 18, and we were talking about lust, you know, and he said to me, he goes, "Oh, come on there, Mick." He goes, "Lust." He goes, "Cannot a man enjoy the aspect of a lady?" You know, and I was saying, "Ray, what's this? And what's this? What are you grabbing here, Ray?" You know what I mean? And he was the guy. He was 50, and he used to go to the mature age dance class, and he danced with all the ladies, danced the samba and all that sort of stuff with all the women. You know what I mean? He's this really, really black guy, really, really dark skin, and he danced with all the ladies, you know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and he was a bit of a messy sort of a dude, you know. But so if I just have a relationship based in the physical, it dies very quickly, you know. Like I remember someone telling me once about their relationship with what was it now? It was two people, and they were saying, yeah, she was saying how they they were together, and then one of them broke their leg. But they were like a training couple. Do you know what I mean? Like they were like doing, training, like gym, doing gym together. And the lady said, "Oh no," she said, "Yeah, it's been really horrible. They're on the stage of a breakup." And the other girl, because she was also a gym girl, she goes, "Oh, a couple that trains together stays together." You know what I mean? That's a relationship based purely on the physical body. I like her when she's got the nice gym body. I like a man. He likes a woman who can kind of maybe like throw him on the ground. Something like that. She's got some nice strong arms and a good core strength. You know what I mean? And the same thing. But then what happens? Yeah, suddenly the man he can't go for a jog because he broke his leg, and their relationship ended. That's it. So they were okay as long as they were sexy boy and sexy girl. But sexy boy and sexy girl don't work out when they get older, no? It's a problem for us, yeah? And so the same thing, that when you have union of psychology, and the next thing, where a couple comes together but just with a union of psychology, the best you can hope for is kind of like a brother and sister who live together, and everything works. They sort of like complement each other. He's got what is it? He plays cards with the boys on Friday, and she goes, that night she stays with the kids, and then on Thursdays she's got her sort of girls outing sort of thing, and once a month on Saturday she goes out with the girls and they chat, and then he's got his man cave, and she doesn't really go in there. She's not allowed to clean things up in there because it's not okay, and that they sort of get along and they're fine. They don't even argue maybe, and there's a lot of dynamic there, and I'm not going to spend the whole class because honestly I probably should have talked about that last week, but the best and worst, and this happens if for a person who doesn't find the true spiritual connection with a person, true love, like they say in, what was the movie you watched, kids? The one where only you guys dealt with it and everybody else ran out? Princess Brides. The Princess Bride. True love. Yeah. If we're in a relationship and there's not love, yeah, then there's no unity of spirituality. And so the best you can hope for, therefore, is a psychological connection. And that always ends up being like that, when they're growing up, the lady had a really strong connection with her brother, so she looks for her brother. Yeah, the man had a really strong connection with his mother, so he looks for his mother. And then the mother, maybe she had, the daughter or something, the way she was, I don't know. And then she gets upset or something with him because she doesn't want to be his mother, but then he's looking for his mother, you know what I mean? And perhaps she's looking for her father. Again, now, all of this comes down to psychology. Some of these worse, some of these better, it doesn't matter. But without a spiritual connection, it's not a true union. We don't have a complete union of man and woman, yeah? Man and woman cannot be united in a complete relationship unless they can unite all three worlds, yeah? Physical's really obvious. You don't have that, you're actually not together. It's pretty straightforward. Psychological, but what really brings it together, what really puts the couple together is the spiritual relationship. That spiritual relationship is love, and it's expressed through the process of our life lived for the alchemy. Yeah? As I'm going to talk about, alchemy is life. Life is alchemy. Alchemy is life. Yeah? It's the practice, which I'm going to go into, but it's also our whole life leading up, our daily life leading into that practice. Yeah? This is something, what's it called? What's that Dirk Gently's holistic. It's a holistic thing. A holistic thing. We're taking into account all aspects of the sex. Yeah? Good. Okay, let's continue. All right, so let's go into this. Let's explain this process. So let's start. We're going to explain this act in these three ways. So we're talking here physically. Okay, how do we practice the alchemy physically? Let's talk about this really straight. You connection of the phallus and uterus, masculine phallus, feminine uterus. Well, that's a funny word, isn't it? So I've written above here the normal terms. This means that the penis goes into the vagina. The man's penis, the boy's penis, man's penis, sorry, that's the wrong term. Yeah, the man's penis goes into the woman's vagina. You've got to say that because people, it doesn't go anywhere else, doesn't go to the side, to the left, to the right. We're not standing over here and over there. We're not in separate rooms. We're not zooming in on each other. We're not sitting in meditative practice on different sides of the room, throwing energy balls at each other. You laugh? Real story. Yeah? We can't move the energy in the alchemy. It's really hard when we're on separate sides of the room. What? We're talking about sex, just like it's practicing it with a man and a woman together, united sexually. Yeah? In last week, we talked about why that doesn't work in a homosexual relationship, because you don't have the bits. You cannot unite sexually. You can't unite sexually with hands. You can't put a penis in each other's hands and then unite sexually because you're not inside. You're not unified. It doesn't work that way. You can't put it in any other strange orifice of the body. It just doesn't work that way. We must have the connection. Yeah. So this is the connection, and this is actually something very spiritual, because this is about the completion. If we're talking about from when we were in Lemuria, when we were still awake and we had the Kundalini and we were awakened beings, we had the masculine and feminine together. We were united. And ever since we've lost that state, and ever since we lost the absolute, we are always looking to reunite that nature. And that's why you see sex forms everything, because it is part of that process. We're looking to reunite with our complement so that we can both then ascend back to the absolute. So it's very important to have this masculine and feminine thing. So to practice the alchemy, we must have the sexual connection. Now, the next most important thing is we practice, and Samael gives it very simply. He says to connect the sexual organs in that manner, and then disconnect, avoiding the sexual spasm, avoiding the orgasm, avoiding the ejaculation. About orgasm, spasm in both, not just ejaculation, but the orgasm in the woman as well, to avoid. And that's all he really gives. He gives a lot more information over time. But what we're saying there is that a very large amount of the practice is obviously going to depend on the couple. Yeah, Gnosis doesn't give you all of the keys for that. I'm going to teach you about moving energy and all this sort of thing. But it is still a sexual act. We are still going to have the same feelings, the same movement, but not reaching that orgasm, not having that spasm, not allowing the man to lose his sexual fluids. Yeah, not allowing the woman to reach that orgasm. So this is to avoid the spasm. Okay. So, let's continue on. All right. I'm going to come back to these parts here as we continue on. So when we're practicing, when we're united like that, we start to create a magnetic connection. This is so unbelievably important, yeah? When we unite sexually, we create a magnetic connection. So it's not just that, it's not just about the physical connection. It's not just because everybody often people when they try to explain spiritual things, they sort of just go to like the brain. Do you know what I mean? Like in the sort of pseudo-spiritual world, we try to make spirituality real by connecting it to the brain and going, your brain does this and this and this, and that's a spiritual sensation. No. When you're practicing alchemy, yeah, because of your vital bodies, yeah, which is actually the sexual body, the Yesod on the Kabbalah, we start to magnetize each other. And the sexual organs, so during coitus, the sexual organs charge, and actually charge the whole body. As we start to practice, as we are moving together, as caressing, as we're close like that, practicing the alchemy, as we're sexually moving, what happens is we charge, and we become these very strong. And you feel that in the sexual act, you feel that you want to become closer and closer and closer and closer the whole time, very strongly. Now, when we have the sexual spasm, when the man ejaculates, when the woman reaches the orgasm, what happens is we actually lose that magnetism. Like that, and so you literally have like that when you're there, you're sort of, and we're getting closer and closer and closer like this. You know what I mean? And we're getting closer and closer and closer. We just so strong and all this energy moving, and then when we have the orgasm, it literally goes bang, and we both fire off like that. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like that magnet then goes the other way and we repel. In the beginning, as I said, you might not notice this so much. If you're just having a sexual relationship with a random person, you're not going to notice it quite so much, yeah? But over time, it will become obvious. You talk with many, many men, for instance, who are very nahamine, like we talked about last week, constantly having sexual relationships, constantly fornicating. After a while, they start to notice in themselves are actually a proclivity to want to actually get away from women almost immediately after the act. The same thing, long-term couples end up getting divorced because they're constantly fornicating. So this magnetism is just getting lost every single time. Now, if we keep this magnetism, it actually builds up. And I mean, it builds up practice by practice, yeah? In the beginning, even a relationship, yeah, that is, like as I said, a couple that's very close to being divorced or something like this, that magnetism is now very hard because it's sort of almost pushing apart. But every time we practice, even if it's only a few minutes, that magnetism will slowly start to build up again. And it will start to build up, and you'll find slowly you'll remagnetize to each other, yeah, really strong, because that's what it's like. Every time, it's like it's like an electric magnet. You know how like you have like a normal magnet, you have like an electric magnet, and you get the electric magnet, you kind of like, you get something like, you sort of rub the magnet on it, and it then gets stronger, that magnet gets stronger. That's what it's like, yeah, as you come together each time. And because you're then separating sexually, so after the sexual act, you then go apart, and you're no longer, because you're not reaching that spasm, you actually retain that magnetism. And that magnetism builds in the relationship and just makes you stronger and stronger and stronger. Yes? Now, I'm sure you're going to ask, can that lead to outbursts? Yes, of course it can, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I just mean as in, because you get really magnetized, so something got this force, and you might have a few arguments here and there, but at the same time, it's like the sort of argument that still leads to you being okay, if you know what I mean. I probably shouldn't have said that. Well, it's true. You get really magnetized, and sometimes you're just like, haha, I'm going to make fun of my wife for no reason. And she's like, I'm going to kill you. You know what I mean? And then we laugh, and I go to work to get away. And I come home later, sorry, darling, didn't mean to make that silly joke, which wasn't really very funny, you know what I mean? But, we feel that, we get that force, that energy. It's good. It builds. Now, as I said, if we don't go to the esoteric, which I'm going to talk about, that magnetism just sort of builds. And there are schools that teach this. For instance, the studies of the lady who wrote the book on Cupid's Poison Arrow and Peace Between the Sheets, and she wrote a lot of stuff about this, but she doesn't, this is all just about magnetism, but she never went to the esoteric. Very similar to Mantak Chia's conversations by, when he talks about sort of Taoist sort of stuff that he teaches, which is sort of semi-Taoist. Again, it's all working with just magnetism. So just magnetism, just a magnetic sexual relationship can fix huge amounts of simple, complicated relationship problems, can fix huge amounts of sexual problems, like men's infertility can be fixed by magnetism. Straight up. I know guys who could not get it up. That means they couldn't get an erection for the younger people in the crowd. Yeah. They couldn't get the erection on the phallus. They couldn't have that. And they had to start practicing alchemy with the pills, with Viagra. But after a few months, everything was fine. Everything goes back to normal. Yeah. So just the magnetism itself has an amazing capacity to help the physical body, the health, and help the relationship. And so what this does is this starts to build up magnetism within the relationship. Okay. So I'm gonna come back to some things as we go. So the third part to a sexual connection, to a practice of alchemy, is the esoteric. And as I said, this is not really taught anywhere else publicly. I'm sure that there are schools around that don't teach publicly, like the ancient lamas would teach this student to disciple. Same, there's some of the very, very old Taoists knew some things of this. But publicly, Gnosis is it right now. Yeah? And that's because Samael was given permission to teach these publicly. So the esoteric use of the sexual energy and use of the sexual act is that when we are in the sexual act, the couple is surrounded by terribly divine currents, yeah? This is because if we begin to use the sexual act if we upgrade it from more than just a physical thing, yeah? More than just a magnetic thing, but actually take it to an esoteric level, and this is adding that spiritual yearning, yeah? Then what happens is we're starting to work with the force of the Divine Mother and the Holy Spirit inside of ourselves. Yeah, we're starting to transmute that energy. This just works a little bit with it. We kind of feel it a lot, and we have a lot of good sensations. But when we take it to the esoteric, we're actually transmuting. So those terribly divine currents, when taken advantage of, can transmute our physical, raw sexual energy, the sperm in the man, the sexual waters in the woman, yeah, and can actually transform that, transubstantiate, to go from one substance into another substance, can transform that into a totally new substance. It can regenerate the brain. It can create the internal bodies that we've talked about for many weeks now, the internal bodies of the being, and it can cause the the sparking of the awakening of the Kundalini fire. the fire and the mystical fire talked about in the ancient Christianity, the Kundalini fire, the power of our birthright is actually what the Kundalini is. Something very, very important. So, okay, let's explain this sexual act thing. So we've already explained that we're connecting, that we're not losing the orgasm, that we're working with the creative energy, we're working with each other, we're there in the sexual act, moving at our own pace. And now, what we do, because we have this creative unity there, we have a man and a woman, the same power that creates a body, this atomic power, we can then use this to transmute. Yeah? So to transmute, we can use this mantra here. E, A, O. What are you doing to it? So, you walked across the screen. I can use it for the thumbnail. Why'd you walk over here for a second? I want to put Ruby in the thumbnail of this video, but she won't let me do it. Okay, so so excuse me. So the mantra is E-R-O, and E-R-O is the mantra for moving the sexual energy in the practice of alchemy. So during the practice of alchemy, physically out loud we can say it, or mentally if we find it to be distracting. Some people find the mantralization out loud when you're in the sexual act to be distracting. I personally find it to be fantastic, but that's just me. We can pause or we can do it while we're moving. It doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're actually then moving this energy from the base. I should have drawn a. Well, let's use this guy. If we imagine here, this is our little image of our spine. This is our spine, and then the Ida and Pingala that we often put on the board. So these are our sexual currents, like that. What we're doing is we're taking our sexual fluid from the base here in our sexual center, in the gonads, and as we're charging it, so the E refers to the fire that boils the water. So we're in a sense we're appealing there to the fire element in the body. E igneous, boiling the waters. A aqua, the waters boil, they heat. Yeah, we're asking the water elementals of the body, and then O origo, which means air. And then what happens is that water, as it boils, it then starts to ascend the spinal column like that, up. And that's why you see in all those old alchemical drawings, like the old alchemist drawings, you see them like that, sitting with a beaker and they're boiling a fire and they've got the heat going up and they're careful. They're being so careful with the fire. So careful. That's because if you're not careful with the fire, you reach the orgasm. If you're there, you go too far, you lose it. The man ejaculates, he loses sexual energy. So we're still there, of course, all the same sexual sensations. We're feeling that force. We're boiling that water. Then the air, it starts up in the O, it moves up, and together E-R-O is actually the mantra for earth, and that is then re-solidified within the brain. So moving up. So we're actually using this particular mantra, E-R-O. We are moving just like the hamsa, breathing in up, and then moving it to the brain and re-solidifying the brain, but also moving it down to the heart as well. And we're creating this movement. That's why you see that as well, the sort of Kundalini pictures on the pharaohs. They have the snake going up the spine. The energy moves up the spine and then down. And so we can just focus on that mantra, or we can also focus on moving the energy. We can draw the energy. You can use your muscles. You can breathe and feel it with you. It's entirely up to you. How you feel that energy is completely individual to each person. Yeah, some people, they really like to use the muscles, etc. Other people just simply breathing. Other people just working with the mantra. Some with visualization. All we're doing, though, is we're moving that energy from the sexual center where it becomes, we're heating it, yeah, which is moving, sexual moving, sensation, caressing, etc. And then transmuting it. So I'm then moving it internally up, to the brain, down to the heart. And so what we're doing is we're taking away all of that sexual attention that gets completely centered on the sexual organs during the practice. When you're in a sexual act, all your energy sort of focuses on the sexual organs and then it just gets lost. Whereas here, we're actually spreading it through the whole body. So then it goes from there and then we move that force up to the brain, then down to the heart, and it moves through the whole body like that, yeah? So, and this, as I said, this action will then regenerate the brain and it will start to cause the transmutation of the mercury, which is what we talked about in the last class. It'll begin to take our raw sexual energy and then begin to remove that dry mercury from it, remove the many impurities that have come from the lack of correct use of the human machine, but more from the constant lives of fornication. As this will slowly clean our energies, clean our sexual center. This is something very important. It's not enough. You can't clean your sexual center by just thinking good thoughts. You know what I mean? This is a sort of a celibate way of thinking. You know, I can just sort of be on my own as a guy and just sort of not have any relationships, and then somehow I'm just going to, you know, clean my sexual center. And then somehow this guy ends up, you know, he's a priest chasing the altar boys around. Awkward stuff. You know, well, that's because he hasn't actually moved his energy. So his energy's sitting there, stagnating. And you know, like when water goes stagnant, it's like really gross. His water's stagnating there in the sex, it's stagnating. And then because of that, it doesn't move. So we need to move that energy in the practice. Move. If we don't move the energy in the practice, we lose it like that, yeah? Or you have like a really stale practice. Yeah. Otherwise, we have a really stale practice, you know? Okay. Excuse me. So, the next thing that we do in the alchemy, awakening of the Kundalini fire, yeah? As we said, the Kundalini exists within each one of us, coiled within in the coccyx, in what they called, the Dantian, I believe. I forget the term. It's coiled in the spinal column, in the coccyx, in the tailbone 3.5 times. And through this process of transmutation and the sexual act, we will begin to ignite the Kundalini. But the Kundalini must also be agitated, ignited using this mantra here, Kandil Bandil Ar. But it's done like this. Kandil Bandil. And the R is a slightly higher R, like a rrrr. Samael says to do it like a Indian going into battle. But I think that's perhaps a little confronting in the alchemy. You know, you imagine you're there, it's very intimate, maybe you have a nice candle or something, and you Kandil Bandil, and it's just like, it's a bit much, no? You know, like, I don't know, man. But somehow, I mean, he was the regent of Mars, yeah? His being is the... What's that?
You wouldn't wake up the kids.
Yeah, you wake up the kids. That's so true. Yes, you have to be quiet. So, Kandil Bandil Ar. This mantra, I said, is to awaken the Kundalini. Once we awaken the Kundalini, you don't have to do the Kandil Bandil anymore. You can if you really want to, but the reality is that fire is now ignited, and that will start the whole process of the internal bodies and everything. It'll start the whole process of the first mountain, which we'll talk about next week, the esoteric path. So, yes, as I was saying, this is very important. So, to awaken the Kundalini rises with the merits of the heart. So we do this mantra. But this is where we start to talk a bit about the importance of love and the importance of not just a connection sexually and physically, even magnetically, but one of love. Because without love, the Kundalini doesn't awaken. Yeah, the Kundalini moves with the merits of the heart, meaning that if you can't practice the alchemy mechanically. Do you know what I mean? Like, yep, that's it. All right, yep, okay, that's good. Okay, you come and sit on top of here. Thank you. All right, we're all good there. That's it. Yeah, that's in. Okay, it's in. All right, okay, yep, minimum movement because I don't really want to think about it. And then, and then E-R-O, you're fine. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm fine. Okay, you're fine. Okay, E-R-O, it's good. You're good. Yeah, E-R-O, E-O. Okay, yep. I Kandil Bandil Arca. Oh, the fire just awoke. Oh, okay, all right, fine. Maybe we'll just do a few crims to finish off. Okay, crim. Thank you, darling. That's good. Maybe we'll come together in a couple of years or something once the fires needs to be awoken to the next level. Thank you very much, darling. You can't do that. Yeah, that's not how it works. In fact, Samael says that it's the woman who awakens the man's kundalini and the man who awakens the woman's kundalini. You know what I mean? And that answers the age-old question. A lot of people will say, how come you see more of the male masters around? You know, okay, the real answer to that is the feminine masters usually tend to be more in the passive aspect and don't like to talk publicly so much. They usually talk amongst, like, quietly behind. In fact, the lady, Raphael Arape's wife in Perth, it's quite funny. She talks quite harshly. She catches you and takes you into a corner and tells you off. Full-on woman. But she's completely awake, you know, and she's got the fire. It's beautiful. You see it, man. She's intense. But but again, it's the woman who awakens the kundalini within the man. So what I'm saying is you see lots of men awakening. Well, they have good wives, yeah? That's the reality, yeah? They have wives that really love them. That's why they awaken. There is no such thing as a great master without a great wife. You know what I mean? It doesn't work that way, yeah? So, yeah, there's no mechanical awakening. So, as I said, it will raise. So once the kundalini awakens, it then goes through this process of going up through the spine, which we already talked about that before, but I'll just sort of illustrate it again. It then goes through, it rises through these 33 vertebrae. And as it goes through these vertebrae, yeah, like that is going up the spine, there's various tests and things that we go through along the way. That's more for next week's lecture, talking about the esoteric path, initiations, etc. Initiations are internal. So, yeah, in that way, we go through all of that. But what moves this is two things. The death of the ego, the dissolution of the ego inside of us, and love. That's what's going to move the kundalini. That's what's going to ignite the kundalini. That's what's going to start the whole process of the internal work. Yeah, and the alchemy is necessary for that. So, just before I go into it, I'll talk a bit about love, because that'll be a big important topic. I just mentioned the dissolution of the ego. So, of course, we can dissolve the ego in our own meditations and our work, and a very, very large part of Gnosis is dissolution of the ego, which we can do as a single person, of course. But the dissolution of the ego in the alchemy is 10 times more powerful. How do you do this? During the practice of alchemy, while you are sexually united, you actually concentrate in a moment together, and it can be either way, the man first, woman later, it doesn't matter. But both of you will focus on one person's defect, and both of you will ask your own Divine Mother to dissolve that defect. So you'll come together. And you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to say, oh, darling, sorry, I'm just going to work on this ego of lust. I saw some women on the beach today. You know, they were Europeans, so they decided not to wear shirts. And I took an impression. I saw their breasts, and I don't know. Then I was comparing them to yours, and now I'm feeling a little bit awkward about that. And can you crim that for me? That's not how it works. That's not it at all. It's something along the lines of, you just start doing the mantra and crim, and she's like, oh, we better do some crims, you know, and then she focuses asking a Divine Mother to dissolve his defect, or maybe, you know, what I'm trying to say is, you focus on your defect. You don't need to know, she doesn't need to know what defect it is, but I focus on the defect, something that I've worked on before, something I've meditated on and understood, that's ready to die, and then I ask for that dissolution in that alchemical practice.
Of yourself or of the partner?
You start either one. So first it can be, so if I'm initiating the process of this in the alchemy, I would concentrate on my defect, and then my wife would be asking, dissolve his defect. She doesn't necessarily know what it is, but she's just saying dissolve. But I'm focusing on the defect that I know. I know it because I'm working on it.
You're going in,
yes,
finding something you know you need to dissolve.
Yes.
And you're asking them why.
Yes. Something that you've already understood.
Yeah.
Don't bring up some random stuff to practice. You're going to mess up your practice.
Sure. You're asking that moment the wife to kind of almost send the energy for the dissolution.
Yes, that's right. To come to ask her Divine Mother, because you're actually united. You're united at the spine. Yes, spine to spine, fire to fire.
On a defect in the other.
Yes, that's right. And then she will then focus on her defect, and you will focus on her and ask your Divine Mother to dissolve hers.
Yeah.
And you take a turn. Turns.
But would you focus on the defect in the other? Or
yes.
Only internally?
No, you focus on the other person's defect. You ask the Divine Mother, you say, my interior Divine Mother, I beg you to dissolve her defect.
No,
do you know what I mean?
But he's saying like in the sense of
You don't need to know what her defect is.
Yeah.
You don't need to know. You just need to ask your Divine Mother to go and help her.
You're
That's
not
it.
working on your partner's defect. You're just sending them.
That's what I was trying
Yeah, just sending the energy like that.
I was trying to clarify that.
Yes.
Whether or not...
No, you're not thinking about their thing. You're just asking, my intuitive Divine Mother, I beg you to dissolve her defect. That's as far as you need to go.
Right.
You don't need to know.
So you're not sitting there thinking about something you really
No.
dislike about the other person.
No. What?
And in that...
No, not at all.
Because I'm like,
It would
this
ruin
is
the
already
practice.
hard enough as it is.
No.
And now you're going.
It's the opposite. It's like helping. It's like helping. You know what I mean?
Okay. Although the way Ruby laughed, I'm wondering maybe that happens accidentally.
No, it's literally helping. So you're just asking your Divine Mother to dissolve her, and you take it in turns. So you might start doing some cream. You're asking for her, and then you're done. If you stop, but she wants to keep going, okay, obviously she's got her defect to work on. So then I ask, oh yeah, my Divine Mother, beg you dissolve her defect, and we do the magical cream together. Again, you can do it all mentally if you want, but I honestly find out loud it's much easier.
Sure.
Mentally is more if you have a person, if you're practicing with someone who's not a Gnosis and they don't want to practice alchemy, that's complicated. We'll get to that at the end. Okay, you can practice the alchemy if someone doesn't want to practice the alchemy, but I suggest you only do that in the case of already being married to someone who's not Gnostic or wants to practice the alchemy. I wouldn't go and find someone because it makes it very hard. Okay, so let's continue on. So the dissolution of the ego is something that we do in the alchemy. Understood? Capiche? Okay. Now, so, yeah, we ask together and we use the mantra, we can use the mantra Krim. You don't have to use that mantra. It's just very good to have something to focus on when you're doing it. You can focus. It helps bring the attention together. I think it's very, very useful. You can just concentrate, but the Krim is really good. So, back to this merits of the heart. This is very important. So, the alchemy really should be practiced between husband and wife. I know we live in a, a very liberal society nowadays, and nobody wants to get married, and marriage is an institution. I mean, I thought that once, and then I got married and I realized it wasn't. Marriage is like a union between the souls. It's like in Harry Potter, it's the unbreakable vow. You know what I mean? Remember when Snape married Malfoy's mother? You know what I mean? It's really important, you know what I mean? It's actually a lot harder to break up a marriage than it is to just break up someone who you feel you're really, really close to. Even if you've been together for 7 years, not married, it doesn't matter. It's much easier to leave somebody in a non-married relationship. Really easy. And I knew people, for instance, who were together for a really long time, then got married and realized, oh no, actually it is different. Yeah. So it's quite important, you know. And I strongly, we do strongly. Samael does literally say that it should be practiced between husband and wife. A lot of people say because he was Colombian, he was just sort of being conservative. But the reason I give and why it's so important, especially for us young people here, is because we're talking about love. And if you actually have to realize that you're in love with somebody before you get into this practice, if you understand, because it's so important. That's why marriage is fantastic, because it's making a very strong commitment to that other person. We're committing 100% to this relationship. And we're married, we're locking it in. You know, it's like, who wants to be a millionaire? The $1 million question. Lock it in, Jerry. We're doing it. You know what I mean? That's it. We're an alchemical couple till death do us part. So this is because, and this is what I need to go into, when you practice the alchemy, the alchemy is a little esoterically, when you practice the alchemy, your spines actually fuse internally. So you actually, I mean, because you are joining at the spine when you come together. That's what happens. And you might have seen this very alchemical drawings. This one right here, for instance, that we keep in the class. It's very small. We have to pass it around. But you see the couple are actually joined at the sexual center, and they come out one spine. Their legs, they've only got 2 legs, but between you see their legs become 2 legs, and then they're joined. Their spines come out from the same spot. Yeah, so their sexual center and their spines become one. You know what I mean? And so when we start practicing the alchemy, our spines in the vital world actually form a connection. So the alchemy, you don't want to just practice with anyone. You can't, for instance, you can't just practice the alchemy with like a prostitute. You can't just go, you laugh, but man, I know a lot of Gnostic. I've been in it's one. I mean, I'm 35, right? So everyone goes, "Oh, you're young." I was born into a Gnostic family. I know, and Gnostic gossip is crazy, so fast, so far-reaching, and I have known many cases of men who've tried to practice the alchemy with prostitutes because they want to awaken the fire really bad. It doesn't work because you can't. You have to form an esoteric connection with that person. Yeah, we have to have regular practice. It's just not going to work. Yeah, that's why it is, and I've got my little rules section here that we're going to go into in time. We can only practice the alchemy with one partner. Yeah, I can't have a woman for every day of the week because I've got a strong sexual appetite. That doesn't work that way because you're not going to be able to connect the spine. What will end up happening is your white tantra will become black tantra. And this is the crazy thing. I shouldn't never have mentioned that in this class, but the truth is, practicing the alchemy, you do gain a lot of power and a lot of force. If you're not careful, that could go many ways. But let's just keep it simple. So one partner, yeah. This is why it's very important to make that connection, yeah, because we will join with that person and we will create a vital connection with that person. And the longer we practice, the stronger that will get, the stronger the magnetism. And when that breaks, it can damage your apparatus. Meaning, if I finish this, so adultery is really, really, really negative in a sexual relationship, in an alchemical relationship, because it violently breaks that connection vitally between the two people, astrally, vitally. And it can actually damage the person who might not be able to awaken the Kundalini after that. So it's quite serious, That's different. A normal fornicator relationship is not going to cause that. Person not doing this at all and having lots and lots of relationships, they're not going to damage their Kundalini, their ability to awaken Kundalini. But a person who starts on this path seriously with somebody and then commits the act of adultery could damage their ability to awaken the Kundalini. And I've heard of people like that. I heard of a man and a woman. They were married for about 8 years, and she had another sexual relationship with a different man. And that night when she went to practice alchemy with her husband, the husband had huge amounts of pain in his sexual center and his spine, really painful. And he just asked, he said, "Have you been with someone else?" And she had to say yes, because she was shocked. She'd been feeling a bit upset, having problems in a relationship. And obviously she wasn't believing so much in the teachings anymore. And she was really shocked to see, actually, wow, that damaged him. So one partner, and if we do go through some situation, perhaps when someone dies, or we do go through a situation where we break up, we should wait 1 year between partners. If we are going to practice another, we must wait 1 year for these spines to disconnect. Yeah? But ideally, it's just one. Okay. Huh? Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, young lady. Okay. So, continuing on. Yeah. Okay. So, to create this next level, so there's transmutation, as we said, is moving the energy, but sublimation is taking that energy to a higher place. So the first thing is we move the energy. We move the raw energy, which we've said before, starts off black, and as we transmute it, it becomes white, and then it becomes yellow, and then when we're ready, we can awaken the fire, and it will then become red. And what I'm saying here is, like, when you transmute, it's like, imagine you transmute like 100 drops of black and you get one white, and then when you keep moving that, you have 100 drops of white, then you can transmute that one white into one yellow, and then you got 100 drops of yellow, you can then transmute that one into red, as an example. That doesn't mean that you're going to have no black left. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's not like you move all your energy from black to white, then all your energy from white to yellow. This process takes a very long time. The Kundalini will awaken a lot earlier than when all your energy has been cleaned. In fact, the Kundalini awakening will speed this process up a lot, massively. And without that, you're screwed. You need the fire. You need the Kundalini is the Divine Mother. Working in you is the Eternal Feminine. You need it. Very important. So, as I said, thus, therefore, the sublimation is important. How do you just describe sublimation, my darling? You gave a really good explanation once.
I don't know if I can repeat it.
There's once Ruby talked about sublimation, and it It was in the class here. It was wonderful, wonderful. So as I said, we're transmuting, we're moving, but then the sublimation is to then take that already transmuted energy to a higher level, to lift it, to elevate that energy. And that requires love. Yes.
I just, by definition, I was just triple checking, but because I was focused on that word sublimation, trying to, the concept of taking something that's solid into a gas, by definition. That's what it is by definition. Like as a straight down line. So then the translation into that for this process would be potentially, I'm asking, would it be that the positive and negative, like when you get a battery and you connect the two together, you create a charge, which gives the power to then transmute or basically change something from one state into another state, solid into gas. Is that
not quite?
No,
that's more transmutation. So transmutation is about moving the energy from one state to another. Here we're talking about elevating it. So it's like as in imagine I transmute.
Not the state, elevating.
Yes, elevating an already transmuted item. So I've taken the energy from a raw gross substance, and then I've converted it into a usable substance, and now I'm lifting that substance up to a higher level. I'm making it. It's almost like making it something beautiful. It's like taking I get a big black pan of stone, I crash it all up, I wash it, and I get these little sort of flecks of gold, and then I turn those into light. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like enriching it to something even more. That's what we're talking about.
You're taking the primal force of that physical sexual nature and the magnetic force of sexual energy, transmuting that through the sexual alchemy.
That's right.
And then sublimating that primal physical nature into spiritual awakening.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Bring it to that. Yeah, right. Yeah. And the sublimation is linked very much to our relationship with the being. That's the real hard part of it. The sublimation, like for instance, I think I've mentioned before about the idea of a chaste monk, that can still be okay. And that's because when they pray, and if that prayer is really sincere, I'm not talking about where you pray and you're like, God, give me a good car or something, Was it God give me the grace and dancing feet or something like that? You know what I mean? I'm not looking for that. I'm talking about when in the real subtlety, they actually have that real love and deep connection with God, that sublimates their energy. Even though it's maybe not fully transmuted, the energy they have still, there's just a little bit of light in there. It lifts it just a little bit, and it sort of gives it a beauty, a force and energy. And that actually gives them and because they're sublimating, it does naturally transmute. Once you're sublimating, it will naturally create transmutation to a degree. Do you understand what I mean? It'll move the energy. And so that's how their love for God is so profound, so intense, like Mother Teresa and these fantastic people. Mother Teresa, she's not an infrasexual at all. She's so much force. You don't have that sort of power, And so she's sublimating, but her love is for God. You know what I mean? That's very hard. That's in our day and age not so common anymore. Not so common. It's still around. Don't get me wrong, but not so common as it was. So we want to bring that into the alchemy. And as someone once told me, people who I have a huge amount of respect for, Javier and Inma Kassan, missionaries from Valencia, I think. I don't know where they are right now. I think they're in Valencia. I remember when I went to visit them in Florence, and I was in a very difficult position. I was in a relationship with someone else, not my wife now. And I went to go and see them, and it was funny. I went to go and see them, and then he just decided to give me some advice off the cuff. It was like we had I got I went all the world just to spend 5 days in Florence so I could spend 1 hour with this guy. That was what happened. I just wanted to see him so much. And he completely changed my life. It was perfect. But he said to me, and his wife to Rosina, the woman I was with at the time, he said, your relationship with the being will be the relationship you have with your wife. He says your love for your internal feminine, your own divine mother will be the same love you have for your wife, and vice versa. And she said the same thing. She says her English was very limited, and she said my love for my husband is my love for the being. It's the same thing. And what they mean is obviously through the alchemy, not just saying I like, because we use the word love very, very liberally in the West. Come on. You know, we're like, I love coffee. Oh, I love, you know, a good breakfast, you know? And then we say that, and I love iPhones, you know? And then I love Teslas. Not anymore. No one likes Tesla anymore. Right? You got to put a symbol on them, you know? And then you go and say, I love my wife, and it's like those are all on the same thing. And it like really lowers the word. It's like, you know, people say like, you know, like how with like Eskimos, like 50 words for snow. It's like we need more words for love, because the love you feel really truly when you are deeply in love with somebody, that connection, that profound connection that builds, it builds. You know, it's like recently, you know, what was his name? You know, Pierce Brosnan, who was 007 in my lifetime. Now he's just an old man. But a lot of people are making fun of his wife because she's kind of chubby. You know, she's chubby and wrinkly and old, and you know what I mean? And people are like, what's going on, Pierce Brosnan? How come you haven't left her and got together with a 25-year-old model who's mostly made of bones? And he wrote, he said, he goes, I actually love my wife. He said, I love my wife dearly when I married her. And now she's given me four beautiful daughters. And he said, I actually love her more now than before. You know what I mean? Sorry? Yeah, that's right. But that requires effort. A lot of effort. And it's very, very difficult. You know what I mean? And I thought that's interesting. So, okay, their lifestyle perhaps, who knows, you know? But the point is, you know, I understand. So he definitely has that love. I can see it because I know it because I'm in love. And if you're in love, you know. Remember in The Matrix where she says being the one is like being in love. No one can tell you. You just know it. I've had people come to me and ask about that. Am I in love? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, it's pretty hard for me to tell you because you just know, you know. And the Librans go, what? How do you just know if you're in love? That's crazy, you know? Like, sorry. So Librans are known for having a hard time figuring out that question, you know? But I've seen that, and it's the same thing. And in a sense, you can sometimes you look at people and go, I don't know, darling. What do you think? It looks like they're forcing it. You know, sometimes. Most of the time, you're not really minding. But on the other hand, I can see when a couple's really like, I can feel it because I know what love is, and because of my own alchemical nature. I have love that I have worked strongly and sublimated that love. It's become stronger each time as well. That relationship, love, sex, it's all the same for me. And it's become stronger, stronger, stronger. So I really understand it. So, yeah, so, where was I going with that? So we need to have this love because, as I said, through the practice of the alchemy, the love that we feel for our partner will become that same love that we feel for our being or divine mother, depending on if we're masculine or feminine. And we'll feel that, and it will permeate into us. Yeah, and that won't be a contradiction. You know, to see them as the same thing is not a contradiction at all. And what it will do is it will strengthen both of those loves. It will strengthen the love that we have with our intimate being, and it will strengthen the love that we have with our partner. But for that to work, we have to make the relationship about the alchemy. And so that means that we need to have these things, as I said here, gentleness and love, in and outside of the practice. You know, to be gentle with each other with the word, in the practice to be gentle with each other. I can't be violent. Yeah, the sexual act, it may start off violent because we're a little bit violent, and at times maybe some of that lust will come out in our sexual practice, and it's not very easy, but it just comes out. The reality is actually as you practice the alchemy, a lot of stuff's going to come out because all your ego, you're working on it and it's going to come out. That's just the way it works. If you have the relationship with people, some stuff's going to come out of the subconscious and you're going to have to work on it, and you may have some pretty out there practice for a little bit. And that's just the way it is. You know what I mean?
Including sexual and karmic pasts and all the untransmuted kundi buffer, the whole lot.
That's right. Maybe a whole childhood of watching pornography too. Whole childhood of watching pornography. That's always good for just,
all the damage there.
Yep. That's right. Well, actually, that's trauma. I didn't need to say that. It's just straight up trauma. You know. Yeah. So, but that's normal. So we need to have that gentleness, you know what I mean? And in the practice, outside the practice, you know. At the same time, it's our practice. We're going to have to learn to work through it. And love, of course, this is what I've been talking about. And so let's go through this a little bit more. So to practice the alchemy, as I said, the next thing to talk about is what we talk about here, the creative magnetic pause. So when we practice the actual amount of times we have the sexual act, we need to let that energy rebuild inside of us. Yeah? And at times this will be longer and shorter. It depends completely on the relationship. Yeah? But the shortest a creative magnetic pause can be is 24 hours. Meaning that we shouldn't practice more than every 24 hours. Otherwise, the energy doesn't have time to build up. Yeah, we just, you can't just, because again, a lot of people learn this sort of stuff. They have a strong desire to awaken the Kundalini, and they're like, okay, cool. So I practice this, I awaken Kundalini. All right, 5 times a day. You know what I mean? That's it, darling. I'm going to have to meet you on lunch break because you're going to have to get an extra practice in. No, not the case. The energy has to build back up so that we can then transmute it again. We only have a certain amount of energy every day. And it's that this pause could be longer, it depends on the couple. A pause like that, an elderly couple, a pause might be a whole month. You know what I mean? Yeah? In the beginning, at sometimes during our process, we might get sick, it could be longer. And this is just naturally. Obviously, the really strong indication here is we practice alchemy when we're predisposed to do so as well. Yeah? You feel in your body, both of you are, I don't want to use a vulgar term, but let's say up for it is the term. It's the unequivocal term of a married couple or long-term relationship where you say, you up for it? And that is perhaps the creative pause. If they say no, then maybe they're still on the pause. Now, the problem here, and I will mention it, is that, again, the alchemy needs to become something important to us, meaning we also have to be careful with our energies, because this energy, as you said, will rebuild. But if I'm wasting, and this happens all the time, especially you have children, I've got children, lots of children, and they take it out of you, but they take it out of you because you let them, let's be straightforward. Yeah. And so I'm tired. So maybe you would be ready, but unfortunately, you're always letting the children run you down. And so then you have no energy, so you can never practice the alchemy. And what you'll see is what happens. The relationship starts to suffer because there's no sexual connection. That love isn't reaching its depth. You know what I mean? And in doing so, the relationship will start to fall apart. Children will just try and do that. That's what they do, isn't it? You're trying. These kids, mum and dad, are rock solid. But it can happen sometimes. They always come in, and the first thing a child does, they come in with a crowbar, and they try and they sort of look for little spots there, you know what I mean? Like this one. Mum, can I have a chocolate? And mum says no. Dad, can I have a chocolate? And if he doesn't say, what did mum say? There could be trouble. Sure, darling. Why did you give him the chocolates? You see them get in there. Try to sleep in between you at night. I remember that. My parents broke up when I was 8. I have memories being 6 and like swimming into the blankets. I'd get in from the bottom and I'd like swim in between them and like sort of push them apart and then sleep in between them. I was an only child. So perhaps I was also part of the reason their relationship fell apart, because I got in there, you know what I mean, between them. And so again, the problem is this is a magnetic problem, because then I don't build up that energy. I don't build up, and then the creative magnetic pause actually doesn't get observed correctly. We should be practicing, perhaps we could practice every 3 days, or we could practice once a week, but we're practicing maybe once every 2 weeks because I'm always exhausted. We say, can we practice alchemy tonight? No, sorry, I've been busy, And this of course, this becomes part of the whole couple. The man has to be more careful with his energy at work. When he comes home, you might be more helpful around the house. You want your wife to practice alchemy every second night, but at the same time, you come home and just go, what's for dinner? And the kids, you're like, so you up for it? Do you know what I mean? Like, what the hell is this? The hell is this? No, man, you come home, you come home, you do the dishes, Yeah, do you know how with dinner, darling? It's the 21st century, mate. Men got to learn how to cook if they want a wife. You know? You know what I mean? Yeah.
I
So
draw the line at cooking.
my daughter doesn't think I can cook, but everyone else does. But
You know, that's a good topic to begin the crib.
but you know what I mean? Yeah, you
First crib.
but that's the reality. So you have to, we have to look at our life and remember the lifespan of the alchemy. So the guy who wants to practice more, look, his wife's saying I'm too tired. Well, look around. Don't just yell at her and tell her, why are you so tired? You should love me more. Come on. You know what I mean? Just look and try and have a look around. Go, am I putting pressure on her? What's going on here? What's going on? What's going on around our life, around our day? How's my day going? Because like Ruby and I have this little game we used to play. We don't play it so much anymore, but we still do. We have a lot of self-compassion, self-love. And we come home from work and then we play the who had the worst day game. You know what I mean? So I come and go, you know. A lot of asthma today, darling. She goes, oh, really? Okay, how was it with you? Oh, the kids. Oh, just rolling. You know? I don't shake my head, but you know what I mean? You go, it's just been too much. You know, and I go, oh, and then she goes, what about you? Oh, well, all my tools broke. You know, got this rash. I don't know if I like scratched myself or maybe it's a tick. I was working out the back of my arm. I think it's a tick. Or it's like a leech, you know. And and we play this game. But this game just causes exhaustion. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like I caught myself once coming down the driveway and I had a pretty good day at work and I saw myself like beginning to like actually slow my footing. This is when I didn't work on this ego for years. And then when I saw that, I was like, I actually had a pretty good day at work today. And here I'm coming and slowing my footing, getting ready for the game. So I walked through the door. Drag my feet. Oh, I gotta get in the shower. Oh, and I was like, and I remember actually saying, oh, how was the day? And I caught myself sighing. How was your day? I'm like, and then I'm like, oh, no, it was a pretty good day. And so I was like, I need to stop this because this is actually damaging our relationship because like I'm dragging her down. I'm actually sapping my wife's emotional energy. Yeah, she also gets, children sap your emotional energy a lot, yeah? So as a man, if you're really careful about sapping your wife's emotional energy, when she's already had the kids sapping her energy all night, because this is going to drive you mad, my male friends, but the alchemy requires emotional energy, not just sexual energy. It's crazy. It took me a while to figure it out too. I thought it was just sex. Sorry, that's a bad joke. But you know what I mean? You have to have that emotional energy, yeah? And so if I'm sapping that, it's not going to happen. So again, if we're practicing this practice in a relationship, we're serious about it, we need to be watching our energies during the day. Yeah, what am I, and also what impressions am I taking? Especially as a man, what impressions am I taking? Yeah, if I have the, like the work wife, like that you have a really strong relationship with someone at work, and then you're coming home and you're breaking your relationship with your partner, your alchemical practice isn't going to work. It just won't work. You're not going to get that depth. You're not going to get that strong transmutation. The sublimation won't be there. And yeah, I don't think I need to talk too much about that. But really, observing our energies over the course of the day so that I'm ready for the practice of alchemy. Yeah, because it's sort of like that culmination of the day. If I've kept myself up, I've been doing my practices, the work upon myself, and then I come to the practice at the end, I'm bringing a good human machine that's in order to that practice of the night, and we both bring it together, and then we can have a good practice. And then all of this transmutation can be done well, the energy be sublimated well, and then we can work on the ego. We'll actually start to get somewhere. So, let's mention a few of the other things. Okay. So when practicing the alchemy, we don't use birth control because if you put like a piece of plastic between the two of you, you're not going to have the magnetic connection. It's just not going to work. Yeah, you're not going to have that. The same thing if the woman's hormones are being irregulated and all this sort of stuff, it interferes completely. Yeah. If we're wanting to have children in that process, we can use what's called the Kriya Shakti. The Kriya Shakti is to concentrate and pray in the practice of alchemy in order to have a child and to release one sperm. Just one. Yeah? That's right. So you don't have to ejaculate. The man, conscious with his will, can release one sperm and engender a child. Now, Samael says you're going to have great children of the light with that. I have not seen that to be the case at all. Every single person I know who's done the Kriya Shakti successfully has had absolutely intense demonic children. But by demonic, I mean like they have a lot of force. You know, like strong character. You know, they yell and scream and fight, you know. And I remember Raphael Arape used to call them children of the light on. So not children of the light, children of leaving the light on. You go to practice alchemy, but you leave the light on, so you get a little bit too frisky, you know, and you're seeing a little bit too much, and then, where? Too late. You got a kid in 9 months. So yeah, that can happen too. You need to be a little bit more careful. You can, but you can have a child this way. You can also have a child because of karmic destiny. It can just be practicing the alchemy. You might just have children. I'm going to be honest with you. That's why you need to be careful about who you're practicing alchemy with. Yeah, because you might have you could be tied to them forever. So you don't want to just choose some random person. We got to be serious. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You might end up with like my level of kids. You know, it can happen. Okay. Sorry.
Or not. Anyone else up too much?
Oh yeah, like we're the oddity. Pretty much everybody else in the entire Gnostic institution only has like none kids. Or like one. There's like about 5 people with one child. Who will practice, you know, we're the anomaly.
Okay.
With 5 children. Okay. 24-hour pause, I already mentioned that. Other part of the creative magnetic pause is not during the menstrual cycle. That's pretty straightforward. The woman's on a natural pause. A woman shouldn't even really do single transmutation during that time because it messes with her energy. Same with when a woman's pregnant. They shouldn't be doing transmutation because she takes it from the fetus and actually takes energy out of the child. So we shouldn't be practicing alchemy, nor should we be transmuting as a woman. Not to shower afterwards. That's a funny one, but it's true. You shouldn't have a shower directly after practicing alchemy. If you're going to have a shower, just have it before. It's like a really simple thing. You know, the reason for that is that it has been, Samael said it, and it's also been passed around that if you have a shower like a few hours afterwards or straight afterwards, you can, especially in men, you might accidentally have an ejaculation or lose the energy. It can happen that way. Hasn't happened to me, but then I just don't shower afterwards. So anyway, it's a rule because of that reason. Yeah. I have heard people say too that, you know, you don't want to get rid of that fire because if you have a very strong practice of alchemy, you know, your body's going to be very, very, very hot. You're going to have a lot of energy afterwards. Not always, but sometimes. And it's not good to cool that off. You should keep that, retain that. Okay. I'm going to mention it again, no orgasm, just because, you know, I've put it down a few places just in case you don't get that, because a lot of people don't get that. And that's women as well. A lot of people don't get that. That's the problem with Taoism. They sort of often say that a woman is allowed to have orgasm, a man can't. No one. Every time we lose that, this whole process just doesn't happen. None of this. This whole board will be wasting my time completely if you're having an orgasm, so don't do it. Okay. I think that's it for the rules. Is there anything else there, Ruby darling? Sorry? Okay. I feel like I'm missing one.
Not during the day.
Oh, yes. I knew I was going to write one more. You should practice at night. We're mostly doing no, so let's say not during day. Okay, so someone else says not to do it during the day. He said the solar energy is too strong for us, and we're not ready for it. He said we should practice alchemy at night, when the lunar energy is more subtle, more soft, and easier for us. It's also kind of convenient, especially if you have kids. Do we have any questions about that? The alchemy is just the sort of thing you do, you know what I mean? It's an activity, it's an action. You know what I mean? Just go and try it if you're able to. I speak from experience. Is very, 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 very good for your body and relationship.
It is a long experience or a short?
Depends.
You can
Do you mean the practice itself?
practice it.
Depends. You might only practice in the beginning. You might only be able to practice for a few minutes or something. Do you know what I mean?
Because it's kind of, you just go to your limit.
That's right. It's a very personal practice, and you'll feel, okay, it's time to stop. Time to stop. Do you know what I mean? I practice maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, and maybe 5 minutes. You know, I remember, to give some examples, because to give some examples, like for instance, I know a friend of mine. When he practiced, his wife, they got together, and they could practice for like 2 minutes or something, because when they connected, he just got super excited right away. You know what I mean? And he was really like horrified when he came to me. Oh, I can't practice, it's killing me. I waited so long and now we're together and oh my God, you know. But I said, don't worry, just practice what you can in the beginning. In the beginning, he started, they could practice for like a minute or two. You know, that was it. Just that connection, because he would just like that too much. Who knows for what reason? Perhaps watching too much pornography when you're younger can be one of them. A lot of those things, it can just destroy your system and you can barely even touch a woman. It can be like that. But now their relationship is much better. Now much longer. So in the beginning of mine, as I said, it could be like that. I remember having problems before, and my father just said, yeah, just practice for like whatever. You practice for 10 minutes, practice for 10 minutes. Practice for 5 minutes. Yeah. It's up to you. I remember the story. I'm going to tell it. I remember the story. There was a time in the old group. This is when I was like a young teenager, but I heard about it where they decided to have like a men's group and a women's group, and like go and have coffee and stuff like that. It was like a new idea in the center, and you know, let's do it. And so the women all went off and had a women's day and chatted, and the men all went off and had men's day. And during the men's day, everyone always ends up talking about it. There's a lot of couples. They started talking about the alchemical practice, and the men started saying, one of the men, and obviously the men, it's all like, yeah, you know, I practice every second night, you know, yeah, it's all good. And one guy was saying, yeah, I practice, you know, quite often, yeah, and 2 hours, practice for 2 hours, you know, 2 hours, yeah. And the other men are like, oh wow, that's like a long practice, you know what I mean? And then the women all got together and had their talk, and I mean, not supposed to obviously talk about what happens in the men's group, but then the alchemical couple comes, and the problem is, like, when you're an alchemical couple, like, that's kind of the most important thing in your life. So you always talk. And I mean, like, you always talk about what's going on, you know? And so the woman comes and she tells the man, and the man says, oh yeah, I heard about so-and-so. He practices for 2 hours. Wow, that's crazy. It's immense, you know? And she goes, really? She goes, oh, that's funny. She goes, the girls all got to talking about the alchemy, and and his wife said, I have no sexual sensations whatsoever. Like, she feels nothing at all, nothing, no feeling, zero, like numb. She said it's like numb, like she feels nothing. She used to take her clothes off before Gnosis. She took her clothes off for money and did some other stuff. You know what I mean? Like, stuff I'm not going to talk about, but do you know what I mean? And so she had like a real rejection, a lot of that Lilithian sort of hatred of that nature inside herself, you know? So she was sort of trying to be the angel, but she is a demon, rather than just deal with the demon till you can be more angelic. So you see the problem there, right? Obviously they're not communicating. You know what I mean? He's there, 2 hours, Superman. And she's like, I feel nothing this whole time. There's a problem there, you know? Perhaps they should think they need to release a little bit, and you know, that practice must be very cold, if you understand my meaning. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't matter. It depends.
Well, I guess it's all trial and error, and
of course,
the journey. I guess the journey is the journey.
I try not to give people too much, but on the other hand, everyone's always welcome to come and ask me in private about questions and things like that. But apart from that, publicly when we're talking, I like to keep it simple, because it's something completely personal to you. These are the things we need to do, you know, but really it's just this. We go to the relationship, we have the sexual connection, and then we don't lose it. And that's it. And then we have some transmutation we can do in that process beforehand. Yes.
Do you talk about age?
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you, darling. Especially for our youngsters in the front row. Okay. So, sexual maturity. Sexual maturity. The seed inside the man and woman, or at that time boy and girl, is not mature until a man is 21 or a woman is 18. Women move slightly faster than men. Samael originally said 21, but later on he said it was 18. Slightly faster than men. Yeah. The sexual seed has to be completely mature. So a man shouldn't start practicing alchemy until he's 21. A woman shouldn't start practicing alchemy until she's 18. And before that, there's nothing really to work with yet. We haven't properly gone through the process of Venus, but you see that in the girls too. Women go through puberty a lot faster than men. That's why you have those little short guys, like our friend who works for you. He's a little guy, but he's still got time. He's going to shoot right up there. Soon he's going to be a giant. He'll grow into his hands and feet. I'm just kidding.
Just quick on the star up there, just any context around that, and the star, this is just a sideline thing for the stuff with you. Do you want to just give a tiny little bit of
Oh, I was just talking about the man and woman coming together. Do you know what I mean? So it's like
relevance to the Star of David is...
Oh, I was just, as in, the Star of David is a sexual spiritual symbol. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
That represents a man and a woman getting together. Look, see? It's a woman with a dress and a man with the pink shoulders. Do you know? Except in our society now, sometimes a man wears a dress. Sorry?
I needed that.
That's okay.
Okay, that was pretty much what...
There's a more explicit one because you can put a pink. Yeah.
And that one over there, the star on the thing that you handed around.
On the picture?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This Joffre's Gemini is extremely sexual picture. That's why it's funny, when I was a kid, I invited some of my friends around from school, and like this was on a projection screen in the lounge room during a party, and like I went out to like get some chips and came back, and they just had a like project up there, and all the kids were like, Willie, boobies, and I was like, oh my god. Sorry, what were you talking about? Sorry.
Just what's the star at the bottom there? What's the representation there?
Oh, the 8-pointed star.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to look it up.
Okay, good.
I mean, it's masculine and feminine. He's done it as masculine and feminine, but I'm not entirely sure why he's gone with the 4.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's got it. I've actually got Joffre's book of explanations of his own symbolism, which is hard to get, but I do have it. And he'll say I can't remember what that is, because you have, of course, the Fool and the Temperance, and there's within there. There's all these different sort of masculine, feminine things. Like there's that poem by Victor Hugo, called Man and Woman, where it's that sort of thing, like with I can't remember how it goes. Man. He says he finishes with man is where earth ends and woman where heaven begins. And he talks about, man has strength, whereas tears, woman's invincible. And he sort of goes through this whole process of explaining and it's quite, profound. But really he's just pushing strongly the masculine, feminine symbolism. But there's a lot in here.
He's got the sun and moon in there.
Yes, of course.
But I'd like to know that next week. If you want
Yeah, I can talk about it more another time. It's not, a lot of this stuff isn't super pertinent to the lecture. Good? Happy? Okay. Should we do a meditation? All good?